Hi, I'm Jackie Tantillo, and this is Should Have Listened to My Mother. It's so great to share another meaningful mother and or powerful female role model story with you. Each week we hear of a unique journey as told by my guest. Did your mother do the best she could with what she had? Did the children raise themselves? Are you who you are today because of or in spite of your mother? We seem to be captivated by these stories, and thanks to your passion for these remembrances, Should Have Listened to My Mother has won a prestigious 2024 People's Choice Podcast Award, along with 2 additional nominations. And you can find us wherever you listen to podcasts, including YouTube. Please like and leave us a review. I'm really excited to introduce my guest. Interestingly enough, we have a few things in common, including our first name. We both have Olympic experience, and we live near one another. Every 4 years, we have the privilege of catching a glimpse of the finest athletes in the world at the Summer and Winter Olympic Games. We all know that it takes a lifetime of talent, hard work, determination, resilience, skill, and so much more to become a member of an Olympic team. Jackie Dubrovich, a 2-time Olympian and 2024 Paris gold medalist in the women's team foil competition, is joining us to share stories of her journey along with Team USA to become number 1 in the world. This medal was the first time a USA fencing team has won an Olympic gold medal in the history of the sport, which I did not know. Jackie also has stories she wants to share about the similar journey of desire, hard work, determination, and hope that her parents experienced as they immigrated from Belarus in order to give their daughter more opportunities to succeed. Jackie is a first-generation Belarus American, and she's grateful for the effort and sacrifices her family willingly made to grant her the opportunity to become one of the best. Jackie Dubrovich, welcome to Should Have Listened to My Mother.
Thank you for having me.
So, as I mentioned briefly in the intro, we do have a couple of similarities, but my experience at the Winter Olympics was just slightly different from your journey, and I'll just go into that briefly. But I worked at the 1980 Winter Olympics in Lake Placid, New York, and was able to go for 2 weeks and have the time of my life. My experience was working in I put in air quotes, the transportation department. So I was housed or put up in a trailer along with everyone else. We were driving the athletes from Olympic Village, which was outside of the village of Lake Placid, New York. And we had to drive everybody back and forth into town to do the events, to do the award ceremonies, to take them to the parties at every country. I don't know if people understand this, but, yeah. And I don't know if it's the same now. I would imagine it is. Every country has a representative house, and they have parties. Yeah. So I actually was assigned to Lebanon, and there were 3 athletes there. They all lived in L.A., from what I recall, and they were on the ski team. So they were there representing their country, but they were there as many athletes are also having fun. So 2 weeks of hanging out with athletes and playing in the snow and skating on the Olympic speed skating rink at night, very late at night with my friends, is a very different experience, yet memorable than yours. And I just want to congratulate you again. You do quite a bit to inspire and educate younger kids that possibly could be interested in fencing, especially young girls and women. And we're also going to talk about you opening up a new fencing facility in New Jersey as well. So first, I would like to step back a minute and talk about your mom. Mm-hmm. How about we just start with her name? I like to know who we're talking about.
Yeah, so my mom's name is Valentina Dubrovich. And like you mentioned, she, along with my father, immigrated from the former Soviet Union, so Belarus now, in the late 80s. And they felt that they could provide their children a better life in America, more opportunity. And they, eventually got married here and had both me and my brother here in the United States. But I always think back to how scary that must have been to just pick up and go to a different country, not speak the language, barely know anybody. They kind of have that classic immigrant story of coming with very little. My dad would tell me they came with, like $50 in their pocket and one suitcase. And my father actually first came to the US and established himself. And then the following year, my mom followed. So I just always think about how brave they must have been, and how my mom spent that year by herself, worrying and not knowing what to expect and such an unknown, and then coming afterwards by herself to America. It's just, I wouldn't be able to do it. I'm not that brave. So very admirable.
She left her family and
Yes.
came.
And they married here. Yeah. In the United States after she came. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about your mom in Belarus. What was her childhood like? Is she from a large family?
Yes. She's not. She's from a small family. It's a shame. I don't know too much about. I know through stories, but I've never met her family. I've never been to Belarus. Obviously, with the political situation now, who knows when I'll be able to visit. And there is a part of me that feels disconnected from my heritage and my culture, because I've never met that side of the family. But she came from, a small town, rural area outside of about an hour and a half outside of Minsk, which is the capital city of Belarus. Came from, very modest background. She went to school for culinary school. She met my father and they made this decision to move. And, it's funny when I speak to my mom now, she is, I would say, very risk averse. She's very humble, very modest. She hates taking photos and she's just very, just very quiet. And to think that somebody of her personality made this decision to leave all that she's known, her family. She didn't know when was the next time she would be able to see her family, and move to America. It's just so interesting that decision that she made in contrast to how quiet and insular she is as a person.
And also her parents, well, I guess, to say they let her go. Your mom and dad were not even married yet.
Yeah, and luckily, so when she came, they settled first in Brooklyn, and so my father's side of the family was already there, so there was some safety net for her. It wasn't as if she came. The journey to get to Brooklyn was by herself, but she did have family there. But still, it's you don't speak the language, you don't understand the culture, and it's also very, very different cultures. And that's something that I still see to this day with my mom. There is, definitely just some differences in perspectives. And we talk about this at length with her. And, I think we've come to a mutual understanding that we just come from very different backgrounds. And where she grew up is not where I grew up. And so our sensibilities, our perspectives on things are quite different. But it's really fascinating to be able to talk to her about these things.
Yeah, the journey across the sea, I can't even imagine what that was like. And she was all by herself. What year was this?
It was the late 80s.
Very impressive.
Culture shock.
Yeah, culture shock.
Yeah.
And how long after she was here did they get their citizenship and all that? I guess it's at least a year.
So it took some time. So my mom got her citizenship, I'm trying to think, I must have been maybe like 8 or 9 years old. And so now I'm 30. So it took a little bit of time for her to get her citizenship. But one distinct memory I remember is her taking out books at the library, of just to help like learn how to pass the citizenship test, and she would always be reading, and that was very interesting. It's like a very distinct memory in my
Well,
mind.
plus she had to learn English too, right? In those 8 or so years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
So did she work after she
Yeah.
had mastered English and citizenship? Did she work before you and your brother were born?
So we've always lived in New Jersey, and she used to work at a like a Russian food store. So that was nice that she had that connection to her homeland. And she, my mom is the hardest worker that I know. She is just a workhorse, like to a detriment. She always needs to be working. And I always tell her at this age, like, you need to slow down, like, enjoy life. You've worked so hard your entire life. But she worked, first at this Russian food store. She has worked for many, many years now in New Jersey, at a country club. So she can't not work. She always
Hmm.
tells me, she's like, when she has her rest days, she just is always doing something around the house. It's just so ingrained in her. And I definitely, I think, have that characteristic as well, where I feel, if I'm not busy, if I'm not doing something, like puttering around the house or whatever it may be, I just feel like I'm wasting time. So I definitely got that trait from
Oh, it's
her.
a blessing and a curse.
Yes, yes.
Oh my gosh. Did she speak to you in Russian when you were little?
Yes. Yeah. So I'm so grateful to her. So she spent a lot of time making sure that I grew up speaking Russian. And I'm so thankful for that. I know a lot of first generation, or children of first generation immigrants that they don't speak that language. And she worked really hard to read books with me, to teach me how to speak, and I still do to this day. But my first language was speaking Russian. My mom didn't speak English very well when she first came, and so that was her way of communicating. And now we kind of speak in a very, and I've heard about this with a lot of uh, immigrant children, that it's like a mix of the language and Russian, and so or in English. So for me, it's like a mix between Russian and English. There's certain words that I forget sometimes in Russian, and so I'll insert English in there, and
Hmm.
it's like this jumbled mess. And definitely for my mom, she's more comfortable speaking Russian, and so when I'm home, we resort to Russian. But
Oh,
I
it's
always,
great. Oh, I
yeah,
love that. Oh, that's the
yeah,
best. And then hopefully
yeah,
if you have children, you will do the same, teach them Russian. You're
yep.
actually my second guest whose parents uh, emigrated from Belarus, which is really quite
Oh
interesting,
wow.
really, really neat. So this is a story of a woman who fill in the blank for your mom.
Oh, a woman who set out on an unknown journey, and I don't think in her wildest dreams believed that she would be, firmly established in a foreign country, earning a living, owning a house, having two, I would say, successful kids. My younger brother is, successful as well and plays soccer. So I think, I think this is what they hoped for and what their intention was coming to this country, and to see it come to fruition. I know in Paris, when the first moment I saw my parents after the award ceremony for the gold medal in the women's foil team event, there was just like tears in their eyes. And I think it all kind of culminated in that moment, that they made this immense sacrifice to come to this country, and then to see their daughter represent that country at the pinnacle of her sport, and then come away with a gold medal, was just surreal for them.
Oh my gosh, you got me getting all teary. Oh my God. I mean, think of that. That's a dream come true for let alone any American parents to make that whole journey. Did they push you and push you and push you to be the best at anything and everything you did? Was there a pressure when you were growing up to achieve and be the best?
I would say so. It was a combination. I think myself put a lot of pressure on myself. I am a perfectionist to a fault, and um, but I would say also growing up, they definitely wanted me. I mean, number one was an education. That was the most important thing. Everything revolved around getting a good education. That was the utmost priority for them. And your other ambitions came secondary to that. So for me, that was fencing. But yeah, they were very supportive. It's funny. I remember at age 12, one day, I when I was younger, I felt like my dad put a lot of pressure on me. He was pretty invested in my fencing, and I remember at 12, I was like, "Dad, like, let me do this on my own," like, and I yelled at him, and I remember this competition clearly, and he kind of stepped away at that moment, but in a way where it allowed me to take charge, and I never felt like they were helicopter parents in any way. They let me be me. They let me figure things out on my own and establish independence, which I think is immensely important and something that when my partner and I have children, I really want to instill in them is that feeling of independence, that feeling of just taking charge of their goals and their life and whatever that may be. And I think also I always felt that innate pressure because I knew the sacrifices that they made. I think that was always a subconscious thing in the back of my head where I knew that they had sacrificed and done things far scarier than I would ever have to do. And so I always felt kind of that pressure being the child of immigrants to succeed. I didn't want them to feel like they came to this country for no reason. I wanted to make sure that I fulfilled all of their hopes and dreams as well.
That's a big burden, or that's huge.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
Well, what about your brother, your younger brother? Did
Yeah.
he feel as though he had to step up as well? Or
I think
you took
so.
that mantle for him?
I think as an older, the oldest child that's a female, there's some burdens that I feel like we innately feel in the family. I did feel like I had to also be an example for my brother Jason, and I had to show him what is possible and to overcome any obstacles that may come our way. And Jason is very successful in his own right. So he's 6 years younger than me. He is currently playing soccer overseas, and he's a goalie,
Oh
and
my
he's
gosh.
very athletic. And yeah, so it's funny. Both of my dad was more athletic. My mom is not athletic whatsoever. And so for them to have two kids who are so athletic is pretty funny. Um, but yeah, no, I think you always feel it. It's just like a subconscious thing. Like you feel like you have no choice but to succeed in whatever you're aiming to succeed in, whether that's work or school or athletics. It's just so ingrained in you.
There's the athletic ability, then there's the mental stamina that comes along with being successful, whether it's an athlete or
Yeah.
a business person. So if you're given those gifts of the athletic ability, I think it's the mental stability that is probably a bigger
Yeah.
obstacle to overcome, because that mental stability is a huge part of anybody's success, athlete, professional, in any genre. Tell me, did you work on that specifically as an athlete? I think all athletes do, but is that a big component of your daily regimen?
Yes. And something that I had wished that I had taken more seriously as a younger athlete. I think in recent times, there's been a lot more conversation about mental health and sports psychology. When I was growing up, that was not one of those like key components of your training that you really thought about. It was really the physical aspect of fencing. It's the repetitiveness of training and instilling those basics of the sport. But the mental side, it wasn't really talked about. And so after Tokyo, the Tokyo Olympics in 2021, that was definitely something that I wanted to prioritize. I had a difficult Olympics. I lost by one touch in the individual event, and then we lost in the bronze medal match to Italy. And the Olympics in Tokyo were not the Olympics of my dreams. It was during COVID, so it was, we couldn't talk to other athletes. We couldn't go watch any sports. We were being tested every day. People were just scared of testing positive. So there was just no social interaction. My family and friends couldn't come out to watch. So it was really difficult. And I came away from that Olympics really depressed. I felt like I worked so hard my entire life for this moment, and this is what it amounted to. It was such a letdown. And so I started speaking to a sports psychologist through the United States Olympic and Paralympic Committee. They've been doing a great job of setting us up with sports psychologists and really emphasizing the mental aspect of sport. And that became a big part of my training was speaking to a sports psychologist and talking to her about how I feel after good moments, after bad moments, and just having somebody to talk to who is not your coach, who is not your partner, but who is trained to help in these types of high pressure competitive situations, I think really helped me tremendously.
Oh, it's so important, and not only for athletes. I mean, now we hear ads every minute for therapy you can do online. You can find a therapist in minutes because obviously stress and pressure of the world and our environment has caught up with a lot of all the generations, really.
Yeah.
I know it's hard to talk about, but I'm so glad that you were able to go in that direction. And again, it's not only athletes that need that support, it's all of us at different times.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Did your mom and dad understand when it was time for them to back off of you? Or did you just say, enough? Or did you have that option?
I definitely had that moment when I was 12 towards my dad. And,
right.
But I will say, ever since that moment, they have been very supportive in a very healthy way. And even when things don't go well or I have a bad competition, the emotional support that I have received from them, particularly, I would say in the last 4 to 5 years, has been really beautiful. I would say, in Eastern European culture, it's not very common to talk about your feelings, to be very open. And mental health is not really something that's talked about. But I felt like my parents in this, in leading up into Tokyo and then into Paris, had done a really good job of being more open about having these kinds of conversations and recognizing the right things to say in moments of when I felt very low, but also in moments of joy and happiness when I do well. And I was really impressed by this shift of willingness to talk about feelings and being more in tune with my feelings. That's something that I wouldn't say has always been the case, but it's almost as if I've gotten older and we've all become better about talking about our feelings together.
Oh, it's so important. Can't say enough about it for anybody and everybody all around the world. Did you fulfill a dream for your mom as a daughter? Did she have aspirations right out of the gate for you? It sounds like obviously your parents were driven, but
yeah.
And we talked about the pressure they put on you. But if you didn't want to go into, to sports, would you have been? Obviously, they pushed you for education. Did you feel that differently than other pressures?
It's interesting. I would say the pressure that they put on me. Maybe in the very beginning was tough when I was a kid, but I look now at some of my teammates or some of the younger women, particularly in the sport, and I feel like in the moment when my parents were putting pressure on me, I was like, oh my goodness, this is so intense. This is so hard for me to deal with. Now I look back on it and I was like, they did it in a very constructive way. I almost feel like it's gotten worse.
That's
now.
Great.
Yeah, no, I do think they handled it really well. And it's funny too. My mom, at the end of the day, my mom always says this. She's like, all I want is for you to be happy and healthy. That is her main concern. That is what she always starts the conversation with that. How are you feeling? Did you eat? Those are always the questions I get from her. And it's funny because in the beginning, I think after Tokyo, when I made the decision to keep fencing until Paris, she she really wants me and my partner to get married. We've been together for 13 years this December. It's been a long time. And so I was getting the pressure from her to get married and have kids. Like, I'm 30. In her eyes, I am quite old and it's time to start having kids. And so I would say that is the biggest pressure I've been getting from her is nothing to do with fencing, nothing even to do with like my corporate career. But it's really like, it's time. We got to get you married and we got to
Oh my
start popping out
gosh,
kids.
after all the other accomplishments. Well, because she wants the grandkids and she can be the
Absolutely.
babysitter. It's perfect.
That's what I tell her. I'm always like, you want these grandkids? Then you gotta watch
There
them.
you go, because I'm going to be working and then she can speak to them in Russian,
Yeah, yeah.
your mom and your dad. And oh, how wonderful would that be? But my advice, and Valentina may not like to hear it, but my advice is when you're ready, you're ready. Age has nothing to
Yeah,
do with it. So you
I agree.
figure that out, and it's your life and your future. So that's up to you. So the last thing I think we have time for to talk about is you are opening or have opened a fencing center in New Jersey.
Yeah, yeah. So we are almost at the finish line with opening up this fencing club in Orange, New Jersey, so close to where I live and where we live, actually. And yeah, that was always a dream of mine and my partner's. He's a fencing coach, and he is also from Maplewood, born and raised, and so he was a competitive athlete up until COVID, and then transitioned into coaching. And it's just always been a dream of ours to open up a fencing center and to cultivate a beautiful community. It's really important for me to, make fencing more accessible. There is a pretty high barrier to entry in the sport, and as the child of immigrants, my family was a middle class family. Fencing was hard to travel and to afford the lessons and the training and going to competitions. And so I had people who saw my talent and who were willing to help, and my fencing club sponsored me. And I just think that sport in general is an avenue for people, or for kids specifically, to grow into strong, confident leaders in their community. And the sport, you don't have to be making national teams or going to the Olympics. I think using sport to cultivate a strong, confident generation of kids is what's important to us. And so we're really excited to do that in New Jersey, and to use all our learnings and everything that we've learned throughout the years in the sport to pass that on to hopefully younger fencers.
I think it's really important. Athleticism, sports teach so much, let alone the discipline. And hopefully it's a sport, whether it's inside or outside, you're getting exercise, you're interacting with people, you're experiencing highs
Yep.
and lows, and that you take wherever you go. It's very, very important. Jackie Dubrovich, this has been an absolute pleasure speaking with you.
I've never been interviewed and been asked these kinds of questions, so this has been really fun for me to talk about my background and my family.
I wish you best of luck in all of your endeavors, and please say hello to Valentina.
I will. Thank you again.
And we'll be back next week with another episode of Should Have Listened to My Mother.